And so that was really hard. And another thing is like if you put a really long note here, how are you going to represent that long note well to any user? So we sort of skipped beyond this one. This is another iteration. This was sort of a hybrid iOS Mac design that we did. That was pretty much to engage the audience a little bit more. You'll see at the top, actually I can use this crazy tool. At the top here you can see the people that are taking part in this presentation. The idea here was that, well, maybe all of you guys have computers or or tablets or whatever sitting in front of you. How cool would it be if you didn't have to squint at this 640 by 480 resolution display and you could see everything in high res right in front of you? And then we realized there's plenty of great software that lets you do that. The presentations that we want to fix are the ones that happen every single day, so this wasn't the target. This is another one. We were actually really excited about this because we get tons of user feedback. Man, I want to lay my notes out in some sort of two-dimensional space, and I want to throw notes over here, and I want it to be like a tabletop, and it'll be great. And we actually did a bunch of designs. We iterated a ton on this. Like we spent probably too much time on this. And then we realized, I'm like looking out, and there are folks from the presentation mode team that are here. We spent a lot of time on this, and at the end, it wasn't really simple, and when you have more than 5 notes that you're trying to present, it gets really unwieldy. And even more is like when you're trying to deal with multiple representations of these sort of meeting boards, it gets even more confusing. And you're like, well, maybe I'll use a layout to try to keep track of that presentation. Like I'll remember that, well, I shaped this one in the shape of a cross, and that one in the shape of a star, and that was my EC3 presentation. And the other thing is like, presentations generally have more of a linear flow where you'd like them to, or else you lose yourself. So meeting boards as a concept died, sadly. So if you go as one of the two-dimensional stuff, you're gonna have to wait. Then another thing that we wanted to do really well was handle images. And so we wanted to be able to take whatever you throw at presentation mode and make it really, really beautiful. And so this was one concept that we had, just sort of making a tile view of all the pictures. As it turns out, this looked like crap for most of the pictures that we had put in it. Like we put a bunch of wallpapers in here. We were like, wow, this is really beautiful. Look how I want to go to all these places. And then we put in like design mock-ups and normal pictures that I take of my toes in the sand or whatever, and it looks terrible. And so that was a bad idea. That actually looks really good. Another one is a way to call attention to a single picture. This was okay. There's a little bit of depth here that we didn't really want to continue exploring. There's a drop shadow in the gray, but it's really close to what we ended up with. We tried a different sort of tile layout, but then this one broke down because you don't necessarily know that the size of the images that you're presenting consecutively are going to look good together. So that was a little strange. And then we thought about doing this like nice little parallax effect, an iOS 7 style overlay, and a little bit of frosted glass. And it turns out it's really easy to make that look crappy, so we decided not to do that. And finally, if you guys have ever been to any of our design talks, you know that our designers are fanatical about icons. And in front of all of these people, I would like to apologize to the presentation mode team who produced probably like upwards of 500 different variations of icons for this one feature. And so I'm going to walk you through just like a couple of different iterations of that, or sets of iterations. These are some hand-drawn ones. From that, we went on to these guys, and I don't know how well you can see this, but in the center here, you actually have a projector. This tested really well with folks my age and above, and then no one else really knows what a projector is anymore. And people were like, why is your presentation mode icon a camera? And we were like, what? You talk? Oh, okay. So you know what a camera looks like. No one knows what a projector looks like anymore, as it turns out. And then we tried all sorts of different projector screens. As it turns out, these projector screens on the right, when they're really small, look kind of like trash cans. And people were like, why is it making my note bigger when I want to throw it in the trash? So that was a problem. And then, so we have some more iterations on the trash can design here, because we didn't really want to put the trash. And I'll stop. And then finally, what we ended up with, and you can see just dozens of these various iterations of multiple sizes of the sort of play button, screen, hybrid that we ended up with, And we wanted to sort of convey that sort of sense of motion and forward motion at the same time as presenting on a screen, and everyone sort of got behind, like, if you can make it look like a screen, that's probably a great thing for it to be. So that leaves us with version 1 of presentation mode. How many of you guys have used presentation mode? Show of hands. Okay, great. How many of you guys, I'll do it the other way, how many of you guys have not used presentation mode? Awesome, that's great. So I will show you guys all something hopefully cool today. The first requirement of presentation mode is that you should be able to take an existing note. So this is a note inside my account. This is the icon for the ScanSnap, the ScanSnap Evernote Edition installer. And so this is a note inside of my actual account. When I present that, it strips away everything and just leaves clean title, clean text, and formats the image so that it looks beautiful and clean. It looks like a presentation that you spent a ton of time on. The technology behind this to do this was tremendous. Like, we thought if you guys are familiar with Clearly, we were like, oh yeah, we have the technology to strip out all of this extraneous information. It'll be in the bag. We'll be done with it in like 12 hours. No way. This was painstaking, because as it turns out, Clearly is really good for stripping out ads from a web page, but it's not really good at making content that you formatted look like a presentation. So we did that. The next one, internally, we've sort of called the magic spacebar. And even folks that have tried presentation mode, do you guys know about the spacebar's behavior? Have you guys played with it? Anyone? One person, 2 people, 3 people who work here? Great. Awesome. So we're doing our jobs terribly. The magic spacebar is actually how I'm advancing this presentation right now. I'm using a clicker which behaves exactly like the spacebar. And so what that does is it advances the presentation automatically based on logical breaks in your information. And so this note that I have is a set of graphs. And so as you can tell, like, I didn't actually do any sort of pre-organization of this. I just shoved a bunch of graphs in here and then rickrolled the entire audience. And I didn't even have to organize them in any way, shape, or form, and it was just space, and I'm off and ready to go. Then there was the laser pointer. And boy, oh boy, this is the first thing that people play with. A lot of people do their user testing on people. They look for new users, existing users. They look for different demographics, age, and income. We did all of our user testing on cats. And so I'm deathly allergic, so this made it very challenging for me to do our user testing. But we tried to do lots of playing with cats to sort of mimic the effect of a laser pointer. And this took our engineers a frightening amount of time to make the laser pointer really, really whimsical. And I'll share with you guys a secret tip, pro tip. If you hold the shift key, it makes it go much slower. Ooh. Yeah. Anyway, so we wanted to make sure that the laser pointer was slow enough that you could, sort of draw around the screen, but fast enough that you could just underline something really, really quickly. And so these were the 2 guiding gifts that we used to make sure that cats in real life would really enjoy the laser pointer. We used old machines from IT and watched the cats. We didn't actually. Anyway, next, it had to be able to handle whatever document you throw at it, because people put everything in Evernote. They put all sorts of crazy documents. This is a resume of a good friend of mine. We should totally hire him. He's an engineer, and he handed me his resume, and it's a Word doc. And if I'm presenting this, I can just go ahead and click into it, and I get a nice full screen view of it. And I can also zoom in. I can use the laser pointer. I can say, oh, okay, so we worked at Davis and did such and such a thing. So if we're in a recruiting meeting, I can easily pull up a bunch of resumes that I just collected, point out relevant pieces, and then go back to my presentation and move on. Similarly with PDFs, so this is a couple of pitches from the 30-second promo spot for the ScanSnap Evernote edition. This is a PDF, and you can just jump into the PDF, advance page at a time, and see everything naturally. Like, you don't actually have to break this out and put it into a separate piece of software to view your presentation, view your PDFs really nicely. Lastly, keynotes. Like, God forbid you actually have a keynote and you want to present it, you don't actually have to open it in Keynote. You can just open it in presentation mode and then advance through your keynote inside of presentation mode. So you literally just dump your PowerPoints and keynotes inside of an Evernote note, and you can present straight from there. And you can even present multiple ones, because you can go back and forth between multiple presentations. It's great. So, almost lastly, multi-monitor support. And this is something that if you are ever in a meeting and you want to take notes and make action items, but you want people to feel involved in the making of these action items, a lot of times, people will scribble it down on their own piece of paper or take it down in their own Evernote. That's okay, but it would be much better if you could project the action items that you're taking on the screen in real time. And so what I can do here is just on my screen right here, I actually have my actual Evernote window. And so I can open up this note here and just say, I will not use pictures of cats at the bottom of the note, and it will automatically scroll to the bottom of the note. And then if I say I will not use PowerPoint or Keynote back at the top of the note, it will jump straight back to the top of the note and update it. And so in real time, it shows you on the big screen it shows everyone what you're working on your small screen. And so it's in real time, dynamically formatting everything for everyone else and making it really, really pretty and looking like you're creating a presentation on the fly. So for any sort of action items, this is kind of the jam. And then, lastly, Phil touched on this in his keynote today. I'll go into a little bit how it works. If you have a group, and actually this was driven by the idea that you have multiple notes for sort of a longer meeting. If you select, you can select as many notes as you want, hit create a table of contents note, and then you basically get a set of note links. Now, how many of you guys know what note links are? God, you guys are awesome. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what, yeah, exactly, do a wave. For those of you who don't know what note links are, they're basically references from one note to another note somewhere else inside of your own Evernote account. So it can basically turn your Evernote account into a little bit of a wiki. This table of contents feature works really, really well with presentation mode. So I just created, this is an actual table of contents, and I'm just going to advance through it, and it will automatically pick up the first thing in the table of contents, advance through it. When I'm done with the first thing, it'll jump back and it'll select the next thing in the table of contents, and I can jump through it. And so this is something that, very low friction. If you want to present a bunch of notes, you can just go through it really, really quickly and easily. So in conclusion, we really should be using lots of cat GIFs to make our awesome software. And if you guys have any questions, if you guys worked on presentation mode, if you're working on presentation mode, raise your hand real quick so people can see. These are the team from Zurich, team from Austin. These are the people that actually built. Yeah, stand up, stand up, stand up. Small round of applause. So if you guys have technical questions for how this thing was actually built and how we made notes look presentable, they will know the ins and outs, the actual technical implementation of how this was done, and it's crazy. So I guess we want to open it up for questions, comments, ideas. If you guys have things that you want us to be able to do, let's do it. And we're going to use the catch box. And again, my favorite thing about this catch box is, can we just pass it back? I'm going to throw this, Tammy, pass it back further. My favorite thing is watching people who don't know what the catch box is use it for the first time. They'll catch it and put it under their arm, or they'll catch it and stare at it for a second, and then put it under their arm. Yeah.
Am I doing it right?
Oh, you're doing it great.
Perfect. I'm really excited about this. Thank you all for creating this fabulous feature. But when you pull keynotes in, does it hold transitions and elements like that?
It doesn't actually do any sort of crazy transitions for two reasons. One is a technical reason, the other one is a functional reason. We actually don't like transitions in animations. And so we probably could make them appear if we wanted to, but it's much easier and cleaner to do stuff without it.
And to be clear, we weren't trying to replace PowerPoint and Keynote. Those tools are perfection for something like Phil's Keynote on stage. When you want really fancy animations, interesting transitions, that's the tool to use. This is to make a collaborative discussion, a really productive team meeting, even more productive. To be able to collect that feedback work on this working document together. And so we don't really feel like that's as necessary to just get the job done when you have a group of really smart people in a room trying to cross something off the list.
All right, throw that one down here. Tammy's the cutoff here. All right.
So how have y'all seen it change your meetings? Are they more collaborative than they were before? I'd like to hear kind of what it's been like to use it.
It's been a lot easier for the attendees to follow the information, to see the information. We think when it's, all the clutter is taken away and that it's really just thrown up on the screen and it's clear, concise information, that people are more engaged, people are responding more. I think that's a point when animations distract, right? When that's just a one-directional sort of context where I'm just speaking at you. Our meetings are a lot more collaborative. We're sort of multi-directional. We're all contributing. We're all building off each other's ideas. And so we find that they are a lot more collaborative. Everyone's a lot more engaged because of this tool.
And the qualitative information that we've pulled from just walking around the Evernote office, like the people that we showed this to, like very rarely, there are two things that I've seen in the past like 6 months that people have been like clamoring to get. One of them is presentation mode enabled on their account, and the second one is like the scanners that they've been tearing off whoever's desk the scanner may be sitting on. Every single meeting now, like if you walk through Evernote's offices, like we don't force anyone to use Evernote for reasons that they wouldn't want to use it. Like everyone uses this thing. It's wild.
And it's just the most efficient thing ever. Every note in your account is presentation ready. You hit one button on your note and you're ready to present. And so we just don't spend time formatting information. It's really about the content and letting that stand on its own feet.
So I'm not a presentation user yet, but I'm excited to use it. And I have a fairly mechanical question related to how you guys presented today. Is each of those slides a note? And if so, how do you keep that all organized? Because I imagine myself having like tons of individual notes, and how do you keep them together with presentations?
So there are a couple, just like the standard Evernote answer, there are a couple different ways to do that, however you want to do it. If you present a note out of a note list, you can advance through that note list very, very easily. You don't have to set them in an order. We wanted to set these in an order, so we actually set reminders on them, and you can drag and drop reminders in the note list. We actually just set the order in the reminders and then present it from the top. The other option is to create a table of contents, and then you can run through if you want like a really regimented presentation, you can use a table of contents. So, then if there are just like 3 notes that you want to present, you can just select the 3 notes and hit present, and it'll present those 3 notes, and you can skip, back and forth between those 3 notes. Did I miss anything? I think that's as Ruben. Are there any other ways? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So basically, it's meant to be flexible. It's not meant to replace sort of the timeline aspect of PowerPoint or Keynote, but it can do that if you want it to. Let's go over here because it's closer. I love this. Nice
toss. I think you focus on desktop, but how did you think about mobile in this product?
Well, seeing as my boss is in the audience, I can't comment officially. But it would be very wise for a company such as Evernote, who released a product such as this, to potentially explore putting this on a mobile platform. This is, so the plan is, like with all the other Evernote features that we have, we want this available. Like Windows is, full bore on this thing. Mobile is full bore. Like we want this. This is something that everyone wants. Like to be able to do this on an iPad would be tremendous. Just pulling your notes up on an iPad, throwing it up on an AirPlay display. It's kind of the dream. So hopefully there's someone here that can do something about that. There were a couple other hands. I think it was back there on this side. Oh, another catch box.
I wanted to know when it would be available on iPad, so the same question basically.
Yeah, so specifically, we can't talk about timelines, but
sometime this year.
No comment.
Okay.
I know you have the share with team feature. Is there any consideration to printing a meeting?
Printing a meeting.
One of the challenges I have with Evernote is the rare time I want to print a couple of, particularly graphic intensive notes. The formatting is challenging sometimes.
So this is not the first request I've heard for printing things. Like presentation mode makes your notes look awesome. We've heard lots of requests for printing. I will definitely make note of that request in my cloud-based note-taking solution.
And we often hear that request because people want to annotate that information. They want to print it out and then be able to write in the margins, underline things, call things out. And with the beauty of Sketch and these deeper integrations that we're building, that's all in Evernote. We're making your life even easier by being able to annotate that stuff within one single tool. So at the end of the day, we want to keep you from having to print anything out or using it, firing up a different piece of software. So hopefully that helps you out.
Okay, I have another question. Any idea about recording meetings and the move of the mouse and everything, and store it into Evernote?
It's a great idea. If only I had a way to record that.
So you can replay the meeting for the people who were not there?
That's a really good idea.
All right. You're welcome.
We'll put your name in the credits.
Thank you.
Any other
Anyone
questions?
else?
Oof.
Thanks. More of a comment than a question. I'm one of the Evernote guys, and this is fantastic. And if you think I don't do presentations, so I probably don't need this, something I found is just when someone wanders over your desk and you want to show them something or talk about something, just hitting presentation mode once it's on your machine. It's actually a really great way to just talk about something. It gets all the clutter off your desk. It just shows everything simplified.
Could you guys hear that? So I think it's because the microphone is about to go right in front of the speaker.
Sure. Yeah, worst position for the microphone. I just think that
Yeah.
sure.
By the way, this is Keith. He's one of the creators of Sketch.
Thanks, guys. Just wanted to add a comment, which is if you don't do presentations, you think, oh, this is probably not for me. When the presentation mode was going around in internal betas, I found just using it for one-to-one stuff was really great because you'd be there, someone would walk over and say, hey, what's this thing you've got? You've got some notes on it, etc., and you want to talk to them. So just hitting presentation mode on your own machine and sitting down and talking and just looking at the thing and not the rest of your desktop and all the other clutter you have is actually a really good use of it. And so anytime someone wanders over, just to have the opportunity to show them cleanly what you're thinking of and what you're working on is a unexpected use of this. I think it's great. That's all. Thanks.
Someone over here. Why don't we try the catch box? Is it still? I think it may have just been turned down because it was right in front of the microphone.
Hi.
So one-handed catch, you're just showing off now.
Do what I can. I had two questions. What was something that really surprised you guys when you started to develop or use presentation mode? And what was the one thing that you guys just really wanted to put in this thing, but for whatever reason it didn't work out?
I think I'll answer the first one. I think just how powerful something as simple as being able to launch your notes full screen in a really clear way with sort of 80% of the formatting that you would normally do in a real Keynote or PowerPoint presentation. Like, that simple thing we thought was was almost too simple. We thought that wasn't enough, and then we were addicted to it. And we just were always presentation ready. We were just walking around the office, just showing off our stuff to people, just to use the tool. So I think we just didn't realize just how great it would be. I'll give a presentation to anyone about anything in my Evernote account, just to use it, right?
Thing that we wanted to put in but didn't. You know, I sort of had high hopes for the two-dimensional note organization. I had no idea how we were actually going to do it. There's so many edge cases that just ruin everything and make your Evernote look terrible. I wish that there was some way that we could have figured out how to do that in a nice, efficient way that was scalable to users that have accounts, you know, with 25,000 notes in it. But you know, maybe one day. And honestly, not even for myself, I don't think I would use it, which was part of, you know, I don't think a lot of people internally would have really been excited. But just because a lot of users I know have asked for that, and just to provide users some way to make their space feel like a desk, I thought would have been cool. But yeah.
So when I'm meeting with lots of different people for a short amount of time, and we go through something like this, and your example there's action items that we create. As like a manager managing lots of people, I want to know when the stuff got done, when it got done, so I know it. But I'm not going to remember it, so I need to be able to see this again. So the after meeting or the after presentation, what are the best practices for knowing, yeah, you said you're going to record that meeting, it got done, and now you're telling me it's done without it getting crazy?
Yeah.
Everyone's going to keep it simple, and I don't want to get crazy. What do people do?
So we use shared notebooks. So we use presentation mode in interactive, collaborative sessions with our team. And so everyone has access to this information. So the beauty of it is, that checklist that Jack just put in there, if we were all part of the same team and we all had access to this note, we could always revisit it and see what edits had been made, what items had been checked off. This is the really powerful thing about bringing a presentation tool into Evernote, is that we already have all the other benefits of what Evernote's really good at. Had we used Keynote for this, or PowerPoint, that would be a file just sitting on our hard drive over here, and there would be no connection back to the next steps, back to the feedback we got from the group. And so by all this information being in Evernote, that is just a living, breathing document that we're continuing to build on, track progress, make even better.
So a little bit of the follow-up is, so let's say the meeting did get recorded, it's done. Does this person then just email saying, okay, it's done, and they email you that note, so you don't have to remember everything that happened in the meeting, you just quickly get to it and like, oh, that was the thing, great, I don't have to worry about it anymore? Or how does that part happen? I know it might be a specific question, but when you've got to make sure everything gets done, it's helpful.
So generally for stuff like this, we'll use, like for example, I use this sort of flow with the designers on my team, and they will just go through and check stuff off as they get it done. And then I'll see something that comes through in my activity feed, like Jason Jones updated such and such a note, and I'll say, oh, okay, so I'll go in and see, oh, okay, he updated something like this, and then he made, highlighted one bullet point and maybe made a comment and said, hey, I need to explore this a little bit more. So I use the activity feed for that, but I bet you could probably ask 15 people in this audience and get 15 different answers for how they manage their workflows.
I think another trick could be to have the list of tasks as a checklist, and then when they're done, have people put the note link next to each item. So not only can you know that it's done,
good morning.
but there's that guy.
Thank you.
But you can easily reference that note and actually see the work. So that's a way to keep things really organized. What was that?
Reminders.
Yeah, exactly. And setting reminders makes that even more efficient.